Welcome to the April 20th, 2023 meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. I am John Dixon, Chairman of the Plan Commission. At this time, I'd like to ask the fellow commission members to introduce themselves. I'll start on my far left.
Barrett Davey.
Louis Pickus.
Jamie Moorhead.
Mark Pasquazi.
And from the City of Lake Forest, we have here with us Miss Kathy Ciernak here tonight. The next item on our agenda here this evening is consideration of the commission minutes from the November 9th, 2022 meeting. Are there any comments, questions, clarifications of those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the November 9th, 2022 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The next item before the commission this evening is consideration of the minutes from the February 8th, 2023 meeting. Are there any comments, questions, clarifications for those minutes?
Nope.
Hearing none, is there a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. The first matter before the commission here this evening is the introduction and opening of a public hearing on the comprehensive plan for the chapter of the Central Business District. We will discuss and consider the draft update to the Central Business District chapter. This will be presented by city staff and the president of the consulting firm, Tesca Lee Brown. At this point, I'd like to take a moment and say a few words. There seems to be a little bit of confusion out there in the public, as evidenced by some of the correspondence and some of the communication that have come back to us and to the city on exactly what a comprehensive plan is. So let me try and see if we can define that for everybody, just to clarify. So a comprehensive plan is the guiding document for the city with respect to land use and development, and looks forward 10 to 20 years in an effort to establish a framework for important community decisions on development, infrastructure, and decisions related to budgetary priorities. The comprehensive plan is not a regulatory and does not establish zoning requirements. The comprehensive plan does not mandate certain uses or direct how specific properties should be developed. Instead, the comprehensive plan does the following. It establishes a vision, articulates goals, identifies opportunities, and offers recommendations for addressing challenges. The comprehensive plan sets the stage for future decisions about where to focus the city's attention and provides high-level direction to property owners, developers, as the city expands and grows. The comprehensive plan concluded in 1998, and one of our stated goals for the 2023 comprehensive plan on the Central Business District, we're seeking to preserve the community's distinctive historical character and quality of life through thoughtful planning with a vision on the future. So now the scope of this evening will begin with a formal review process for the comprehensive plan and the chapter on the Central Business District. The public hearing will open tonight and remain open, at least until our next meeting. In other words, this chapter on the Central Business District will not be finalized tonight. Furthermore, there were numerous correspondence received as late as this afternoon that many, if not most, of the commissioners have not even had an opportunity to read. So continuing making a final decision on this, at least until our next meeting, will allow us all to review those correspondences that have come in. Lot has taken place before tonight's meeting in preparation of tonight's meeting, and we're going to hear about that in a minute from city staff and from the consulting firm. We're also fortunate to have two members from the working group that was formed to help prepare the draft that is before us here this evening, fellow Plan Commissioners Mark Pasquesi and Jamie Moorhead. At the conclusion of this evening, I'd like fellow commissioners to outline areas where we may need additional information or to do a deeper dive on certain topics. With that, I'll turn it over to city staff, Ms. Cernak.
Thank you, Chairman Dixon, members of the commission. You hit on a lot. I'm going to provide some brief comments, and then, as you noted, we'll turn it over to Lee Brown, our consultant, the president of TSCA. This is the next step in the comprehensive plan update process. We actually started this process before the pandemic. Some of you may remember that we formed a working group, much as we did with the Central Business District chapter of the code. We formed a working group first and looked at the Waukegan Road Settlers Square Business District. That working group was chaired by former Alderman Michael Edelman. That group, similar to what the Central Business District group did a walking tour, held a workshop, had various opportunities for public involvement, and then forwarded that chapter to the Plan Commission. A public hearing was held, and ultimately the Plan Commission recommended approval, and that was forwarded to the City Council and adopted. After that, we moved to the Route 60 corridor. Again, a working group was formed. That group was chaired by former Alderman Jack Reisenberg. We didn't walk around that area. We actually took a bus tour, but much the same process with a working group. That chapter was forwarded to the Plan Commission and ultimately approved by the City Council. We then paused because public engagement, public involvement in this process is so important. So last July, we restarted the comprehensive plan update process with a working group, and you will see the names of everyone who was on that working group in a moment when Mr. Brown makes his presentation. That working group was formed in July. Again, that group did a walking tour of the Central Business District, but because of the importance of the Central Business District, we really ramped up, with TSCA's help, the opportunity for public engagement. For this chapter, this is the first time a project website was created. That project website offered a poll, and again, you'll see some data on who responded to that, how many people, and a summary of those responses. There was a comment map that was offered. We widely publicized that project website throughout the community. We did a postcard mailing to every address in the city and announced both the project website and what was available on that, as well as a workshop that was held at Gorton Community Center. So with the Central Business District, the number of opportunities for public engagement and the efforts to reach out and really involve people from all four wards, whether they're residents or business owners or property owners. Certainly, you don't always get everyone involved, but as these types of projects go, there was significant participation. That opportunity for public participation has not ended. In fact, tonight, many months after the start of this project in July, you are just now opening your public hearing. The reason we have formed the working groups as we update these chapters is to be sure that we have that early public hearing so that you're not just seeing a draft that was put together by city staff or by city staff and consultants, that we are, from the very start, engaging and making sure that the draft now in front of you is informed by public input. Certainly there's lots of opinions. The working group worked hard to balance those various opinions. So that's just some a quick background on the overall process to date. Again, I want to recognize the working group, the time and efforts they put in. We'll recognize them by name in a moment. Mr. Chairman, you did a quick overview of what a comprehensive plan is and what it is not. I just want to add that this comprehensive plan, this draft chapter, is not a development plan. It does not propose 3 condos on a particular site or a park or open space or pedestrian connections. This does not direct. It is instead a high-level vision that will really be used as a tool by the city council as they make decisions about what recommendations should be implemented first. There may be some budget decisions that are linked are necessary to be made to implement some of the recommendations. There may be further studies that come out. Those decisions will be made by the city council, and most of those will be directed by the city council to other boards and commissions. For instance, if design guidelines are desired for a certain portion of the central business district, that task may be assigned to be overseen by Historic Preservation Commission or Building Review Board. But that's not what this document does. This document sets a vision, establishes goals, and offers suggestions of how that vision and goals might be achieved. The last thing I'll say is if you haven't been receiving direct communication about updates on the project website, there are forms in the back. If you give us your email address, we'll make sure to get you on the list so that you receive those direct updates. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Lee Brown from TSCA. Lee and his colleagues have been instrumental in really upping our game, and the layout, the graphics, the formatting is really all to their credit. So thank you, Lee, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Do we need to swear folks in, or should we do that at this point?
Yes, and I don't recall whether you asked for any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts of the commissioners. You might want to get that on the record, or perhaps I missed it.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to see if any of the commissioners have had any ex parte communication or any conflicts of interest in regards to this presentation on the draft of the Central Business District.
No.
And yes, because you're opening the public hearing tonight and intend to leave it open, it would be appropriate to swear in all those intending to speak tonight.
So then, at this time, I would like to swear in everyone who thinks that they might want to speak either in support or in opposition on this matter or any other matter on the agenda this evening. If you would, could you please stand where you are and raise your hand? Do you solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I will now turn to you, Mr. Lee Brown, to come forward to the podium here. Thank you. Please state your name and welcome. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lee Brown, and I'm president of TSCA Associates, and our offices are in Evanston, Illinois.
Thank you.
You've done an excellent job in setting this up for a discussion of first the comprehensive plan as a whole, and then how this element or chapter fits into it. I will move on to, I think, the reason why one would create or update its comprehensive plan. Lake Forest has a long tradition of thinking ahead and planning and taking advantage of public open processes that set the tone and set guidance for future decisions. This is another step that updates the thoughts. There have been multiple chapters, both independent and as part of the comprehensive plan, that have addressed the issues for the Central Business District. The pandemic may have only been an example of changes that occur outside and within the community that drive the potential change in behavior and in activities. And every time there's significant number of years that occur between the time the adoption of a plan and implementation, there's always the opportunity to reconsider and to say, how did the changes that occurred either nationally, regionally, or within our community have an impact on our decision process? So it's an opportunity to rethink and to re-envision. Again, it's a look forward, but not to the next year or 2 or 3, but much longer, because many processes that have the opportunity to change or to maintain the character of a community have to take a much longer term view. This plan seeks stability. This plan is not a short-term, what are we going to do next week plan. And it balances the community's wide interests, both within this very smaller area within the community with those of the larger municipality. In fact, we say that everyone owns a piece of the central business district. Kathy referred to the working group that has worked long and hard at helping to guide this draft that's presented to you tonight. And here are the members: Mike Adams, Chris Boyaris, Rosemary Kerr. Rosemary's here. Diana Melikar, Mr. Moorhead, Mr. Pasquesi on the commission, Jim Sitnick, who is here tonight, Brandon Rolick, Jason Smith, and chaired by Randy Tack. This was the charge presented to the working group: to evaluate or reevaluate established use patterns, to identify redevelopment opportunities that might exist, to support the vitality of the downtown, the central business district, to identify pedestrian corridors, to evaluate parking, to plan for open spaces, to consider transition areas, and to review streets and streetscapes. Early on, it was decided that the need for public involvement was critical, and that was the beginning of the engagement strategy that starts and is focused on how to establish a website to present the working activities of the working group along the way and to seek public involvement. That community outreach, as Kathy earlier mentioned, included individual interviews and focus groups. The working group meetings took a walking tour. The project website included that comment map and poll, the community workshops that occurred, the postcard connection to offer an opportunity for everyone to be involved. Ultimately, we had a very broad and representative, we believe, involvement by the community. 564 people took the poll and finished it and turned it in. 1,500 people made unique contact with that website, including 2,500 individual views of the interactive comment map itself. More than one view per person, in that they came back to see how their neighbors and friends were commenting along the way. We had the literal workshop and then a follow-up open workshop on the website itself that included 130 direct participants. These are the themes that were summarized and provided to the working group: the distinct and cohesiveness of this central business district, the continued vitality and the desire to continue that vitality, the desire for a safe and accessible, interconnected place that is not just the central business district, but the central connective district, if you will, and a recognition of the existing natural and elegant conditions that exist, particularly within the core area that we'll describe shortly. Early on, we summarized that for the working group and then prepared a vision statement, and it was tweaked and accepted and presented to you as part of this plan. And I'd like to read it. Looking forward, the vision is not to change the central business district into something different, something more akin to a business district in other communities, but instead to enhance and preserve the historic character and architecturally significant buildings and spaces, and to maintain an environment in which businesses thrive and a place residents and visitors are drawn to again and again for day-to-day needs, a special night out, to find that one-of-a-kind gift, and to celebrate the community. A guiding vision for the plan itself. One of the things that I think was very clear to the members of the working group is that we don't have one uniform character across the entire CBD. There are sub-areas, and they have different functions, different activity levels, different intensities, different architectures, different character. The highlighting of that, the enhancing of that is part of the recommendations. We then suggested 3 sub-areas that had more consistency within those sub-areas: the core, the inner ring, and the neighborhood businesses. The core shown here, I think everyone is proud to be associated with this central area of the Central Business District. It is a gem that is recognized not just regionally but nationally. The area that surrounds that core has a much different character and provides different actions, different activities, different types of buildings, different functions. That we're calling the inner ring, and then a series of sort of independent, different neighborhood business areas. As far on the very north end at Thomas Place, there is a group of both mostly offices, but some personal service and professional services. Then 2 districts that are to the north of the core and the inner ring, and then one finally on the southern end of the Central Business District that is more of a suburban character along Western Avenue in that area number 4. The working group also identified a series of things that connect those individual three or more districts, and focused on the corridors, and in particular Bank Lane was an important corridor that both links and provides an opportunity to enhance the character of the inner ring and the core area that it serves. And so there is within the document specific recommendations on how to enhance Bank Lane, the call for enhancing of Deer Path, and recognition that each of the other corridors presents an opportunity to enhance the character of the CBD as a whole. These were set as goals and aspirations that the working group found. The goal of an active, vibrant Central Business District, strong, attractive, unique, and an emphasis on sense of place, to build on strengths and address weaknesses, a sustainable mix of businesses and residences, and then a reflection on the difference between the public and private activities and responsibilities, and to encourage a collaboration between those two. We also, area by area, corridor by corridor, identified a series of recommendations that are brought to you to build that. These are the titles of those subchapters: building on strengths, maintaining community character, enhancing Bank Lane, as I said, was a focus, rethinking parking as it is, plan for opportunities that might occur, and in advance of presentation of development that is brought to you from private property owners, to encourage the preservation and enhancement of existing historic buildings by not seeing them lost, but in fact, when use changes, to encourage adaptive reuse of existing historic buildings, and an upgrade of infrastructure that serves the CBD, in particularly stormwater and wayfinding, finding your way around the Central Business District as a visitor. There's particular interest and emphasis in the plan on placemaking. It is not just the question of what land uses occur within the central business district, but also what is the environment and character and experience that goes along with it, as you would think of as the memory that is generated upon every visit of everyone who comes to the central business district. And as I had indicated, there is a very specific set of recognition that the city is not the only actor here. It has direct control of what occurs within the rights-of-way and on property that it owns, but it doesn't have direct responsibility or control of private properties. There is inherently a separate role for those who are owners and business operators and residents of the central business district. In the city's role, there is clearly this need for establishing a vision and a consensus within the community about the direction going forward. It does have the authority and responsibility to regulate use of property within the district. It can and it does construct, manage, and maintain city-owned property, including those within the rights-of-way. It does construct and maintain utilities, parking areas that are publicly owned, and public amenities. And it does have an influence, along with others, on programming public spaces. But it's the responsibility of private property owners to construct and maintain private businesses, private residences, and uses within the CBD. And it's their responsibility to attract businesses that provide goods and services the market demands, the community demands. It isn't the city's responsibility to be the chooser of what services are provided and what goods and services. And it's also the private property owners' focus on what is unique and different from big box retailing and internet retailing that makes this competitive into the long term, not simply the trend of the week. We can't compete with Target. We don't have 120,000 square foot buildings within the central business district. What will continue to make this area both vibrant and useful to the community is providing services and goods that are unique and different and attractive to this community and the surrounding communities. We finish this presentation with a call to you for questions that we hope you will be asking and we can respond to at your next meeting. We're asking you, are the vision, goals, and aspirations on target within this document? Do the boundaries of the areas that we've described, are the boundaries and the intent of those sub-areas, do they make sense? Are the strengths and weaknesses appropriately addressed? Is there proper balance between preservation and future opportunities? What's missing? And what should we receive even more emphasis in the document? The working group presented this as a draft because it wanted you to have the opportunity to have direct involvement in what gets adopted. This is not presented to you as a take it or leave it document. This is, again, a draft that they felt represented the issues and the approaches appropriate for providing a direction going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Why don't you stay there, maybe, because I'm sure some of the commissioners will have some questions for you. I'll turn it now back over to city staff for any follow-up.
Just to maybe repeat what we're here to do tonight. We're here to introduce the plan, to open the formal part of the public hearing process, and to hear from the commission, to hear from the public, a general reaction to the vision, to the goals, to the aspirations. What's missing? Do the sub-areas make sense? So this is the start of the conversation. And again, this document is not intended to direct what is going to happen on a specific site or mandate a certain type of development, a certain time frame. That would be a future step. This is high level. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to fellow commissioners to see if there's any comments, questions for clarifications, either to Mr. Brown or to Ms. Cernak, and I'll start on my right.
My only comment at this point is, first, I would just like to commend the team at Tesca and the job they did with the working group. I thought they did a really nice job asking questions to spur conversation and discussion. I thought they listened really well and ultimately created this with all of the input, this plan. And so I just wanted to put that out there and really hear what all of your thoughts are on the plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Pasquesi. Commissioner Moorhead.
I agree exactly with Commissioner Pasquesi. So I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Pickus.
Question about community involvement with the working group and with the consultant. I don't know if this is quantifiable. How much input went into this document and went into the draft? I mean, was there a lot of I'm guessing there was a lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of input. How much of that made its way into this?
I think it posed a number of questions for the working group. We continue to report what first we heard in response to the polls, in response to the comment map. I believe that they were made aware in real time because we were asking them to monitor it along the way, but we would also provide summaries of them. And when we received sort of multiple similar comments, we would use those as highlights of issues that we thought that they need to be aware of or in some cases address. So this was not simply us putting it out without hoping to listen to what the public said. It really was offering an opportunity to hear local perspectives that maybe even the working group didn't have on its own. They looked to essentially present an opportunity to clarify, in some cases, issues that were subject to different perspectives, and to see how many of the comments gave validity to the direction that they were taking.
And Commissioner Pickus, I would add that this draft did not start as a whole document. It started as pieces. There were themes, there were ideas, there were outlines, and my perception is that after the in-person working group, the direction of the document really took a little bit of a shift. I think the early conversations of the working group really focused on opportunities, but you will see in this draft the whole idea of defining the core and focusing so heavily on preservation. My recollection is that really became a focus and was drawn out of that working group discussion. So in my opinion, I believe this draft really tried to build on the variety of comments from various interested parties that participated in the process.
Thank you, Kathy.
Commissioner Davey.
I guess I'll probably have a lot of questions about the draft at some point after we get to hear from the public more. But a few questions on process, and we did get a lot of correspondence, and we got a lot this afternoon before we got to this meeting, so that we didn't get to read all of it. But in reading some of the correspondence, there were questions about our process, right, or the city's process. So my first question for you is, and I look at the working group, and I know maybe a majority of the people on this, but not everybody, but I see see people on this list and people in the audience here who run businesses. I see architects, some engaged in classical architecture. I see members of this commission. I see members of the Preservation Foundation. I see a pretty interesting mixed group of people here, and I just wonder, how does this stack up to what you see in other communities, recognizing that Lake Forest is a very unique community? So just curious as to, how is our process versus what you've seen? You're the professional, you do this all the time, so.
It's unique in that most communities essentially either rely on the Plan Commission itself or on an ad hoc group of existing seated members of various other committees without encouraging those that don't currently sit. So this was First, Tesca didn't choose who was on, and I turned to Kathy on what the original nominations came from, but essentially there was a desire to have representation from throughout the community and not necessarily those that are the usual suspects on all the commissions and boards.
Okay, thank you. And Kathy, do you have any other comments about that? Sorry, I keep hitting my mic, but about the group?
No, only that, like the other working groups, the effort is always to, as you said, bring in people with different perspectives, different points of view, different roles in the community, different tenures in the community. And I think this group, as the two previous groups, really worked well together. And we have found that doing that first offers, what was it, 7 or 10 months of opportunities for public involvement, which is much different than someone simply coming in and standing up at the podium and talking to you once a draft is in your hands.
Okay. I guess my second question is just, and you made a point of it in the presentation, so I was just curious about, you know, the steps in the process around public involvement. You know, how does did what we do here specific to the CBD, given how important it is in this community, did that differ from what we did in those other areas? I understand you took a bus tour and you had individual tours, but was there more communication to the public this time around? Was there sensitivity around that? I mean, I know the community is going to be sensitive to it, so I'm curious as to that.
Absolutely. This process involved, as I mentioned, a project website, which we hadn't done before, and that really came out of discussions with Tesca and was their idea. And through that website, the interactive poll, the interactive comment map, for both of those earlier studies, we did not do a postcard mailing to every address in the community. Now, you know, whether people read it or not, but that linked people to the website, and it invited them to register their email with us so they could get updates, and invited them to the in-person workshop. Those are two really big pieces of public engagement opportunities that were not offered during the other two processes because of the significance of the Central Business District to everyone in the community.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
I just have two comments. Maybe you could speak to them now, Mr. Brown, because I know, and I look out here at a lot of the folks here this evening that want to speak. And I also, as Commissioner Davies said, we've looked through some, not all, of the correspondence that have come in. And really there seems to be, you know, two areas of recurring questions and areas of concern. And the first one is on the core itself. Obviously, the core, for those that don't know, is Market Square itself. And I think when people think of Lake Forest, they certainly think of Market Square. And I think the idea of anything happening to the core and to Market Square would be, you know, personally detrimental to the city and detrimental to the true historic nature of what we all love about Lake Forest. So can you speak first to that, and then secondly to parking and parking needs and some of the conclusions that came out of parking? Obviously two different topics, but maybe if you could just take a moment on each before we hear from the public, that would be great.
So as I read through it, as we wrote it, as the working group reflected on it, there was no call for change in the character or the quality or buildings within the core. Preservation was the focus of that. Whether there is any enhancements of the streetscape or the, particularly along Western, and I think that the core is also influenced by Deer Path itself. Sure, within those areas, I think that they would want and deserve enhancements, but not to change the character or quality of what makes that core so distinctive locally, regionally, nationally. Areas beyond the core, again, we didn't see any need to call out an individual building or site that should change or is required to change, but change will occur, and this document suggests that we should be ready with the right guidance on how to accept that kind of change. As to the parking, I think that the fundamental that and you have two members who can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fundamental is the recognition that, at least in the near future, parking remains a critical element of a successful central business district, that we can't ignore the need to park vehicles. 50 years from now, that might not be the case. But in the near term, if we anticipate successful restaurants, successful active retailing, we can't ignore the desire for convenient parking of vehicles. Some of that can be handled on street parking. Some of it we're currently handling in surface lots. The notion that those city-owned surface lots are going to be at least subject to curiosity, is that the best use of those parcels? There was no commitment to say we need structured parking, that we need those sites redeveloped, but there is clearly the notion that more development, and particularly the potential for providing more residential development, may be in the best interest of an active, vital central business district. And if those are the sites that occur, the notion of parking was about don't lose the parking that we already have. If a developer or in collaboration with the city, there is some development other than that surface lot, they're going to need to provide their own parking for the use, but we don't want to lose the parking that already serves the businesses down in that central business district.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying those 2 points. At this point, I'd like to ask and see members of the audience if they would like to come forward and speak. I know we have a few. Are there any folks that would like to come forward to the podium? Yes, please. And as you're making your way forward there, please, keep in mind if comments start repeating themselves, if somebody wants to come to the podium and say they agree with the previous speaker, that will help as well. All are welcome and all will get the chance to speak this evening. Please state your name and your address here for the record.
Sure. My name is Brian Norton. I'm here on behalf of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. I live at 90 East Woodland Road in Lake Forest. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here this evening with you. We did tender to you this afternoon a letter. I don't know if you had the opportunity to review it, from the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. I will not try to read it because I think it'll take more than 3 minutes, but I will try to hit the highlights of that letter. And really, there's essentially 3 points we want to make in the letter. The first is we believe there's really broad consensus on a couple of things with respect to the Central Business District, which is really important. First, it's clear a distinctive, cohesive, inviting, and vibrant Central Business District is essential to Lake Forest continued vitality and attractiveness. And second, the core strength of the Central Business District is its historic character and architecturally significant buildings and spaces, which must be preserved and enhanced. And we agree with both those statements. We're gratified to see that that really came out of the discussions and the documents that have been produced so far. A whopping 92% of the respondents agree that the overall character of the Central Business District is a defining element of our community. So that's really important for us. And we actually agree with the vision statement that is made, and I'll repeat the portion of it I think is important. The vision is not to change the Central Business District into something different, something akin to business districts in other communities, but instead to enhance and preserve the historic character and architecturally significant buildings and spaces of Lake Forest. And we agree with that. Our concern with respect to the plan as currently proposed, however, is that we believe that the details with respect to how to attain that vision are not specific enough. We appreciate, Commissioner Dixon, your comments at the outset, at the start of the process, that this is not supposed to be a definitive document on those things, but we believe it's a little thin with respect to what you would want to put in place to ensure that vision is attained. In particular, there is a talk that the way they will be done in the plan was that character guidelines and developmental parameters will be established, and those parameters are necessary to set realistic expectations for property owners, investors, developers, and residents, and to avoid surprises. And we agree with all that. It's really important. But unfortunately, in this particular document, it really is no detail, framework, or process explaining how this will be accomplished going forward. There are obviously a number of ways it could be done. We could engage nationally recognized urban planning and design firms with expertise in creating new developments in historic districts. We could expand the East Lake Forest Historic District to include the Central Business District. Right now, there are large portions of the Central Business District that are not part of the East Lake Forest Historic District. There's currently nothing in place to stop development there that would not be consistent with the historic character of Lake Forest. We could develop a third option, develop a master plan for the Central Business District guided by an urban design consultant, or review the zoning code, which would include form-based codes to ensure that buildings actually are constructed consistent with the architectural style and detail that we want. Those are the concerns we have with respect to the plan, that there's not enough detail. And I understand there wouldn't necessarily be precise detail, but at least a process by which we could figure out the design parameters is really important, we believe, to ensuring that the vision that's identified in here, which we agree with, is in fact attained. We would have a possible solution to the issue that we believe for consideration by the commission. Because the issues deal with designs of buildings, many of which would be in the East Lake Forest Historic District, we believe the process for developing the character guidelines and development parameters should be referred to the HPC for review and comment. If you look at the HPC powers, they include the power to investigate and make recommendations to the council and its duly authorized committee concerning amendments and additions to city ordinances. They have the power to advise and make recommendations to other city boards and commissions on matters before those bodies. And they have the power to obviously identify districts and whether they should be identified as historic districts. We believe that would go a long way to ensuring that the parameters are set and designed in such a way as to make sure that vision is actually attained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Anyone else? Please state your name for the
I
record.
shall, just as soon as I get this low enough. Is that good? Okay. My name is Laura Luce, and I live at 111 Ridge Lane. My property abuts the CBD Inner Ring. While I applaud the CBD working group's many references in its draft to balancing development and historic preservation, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical because the city's approach to development has been piecemeal at best and bait and switch at worst. I hope that following the Historic Preservation Ordinance and application of the 17 standards aren't just lip service, but given recent events, I'm wholly unconvinced. The city did set precedent by overturning the unanimous vote of the HPC and allowing the big box development in the historic district. This can absolutely happen again if the city doesn't follow established guidelines, the 17 standards, and consider adopting form-based codes to protect adjacent residential neighborhoods and control the shape of new development. Conveniently for the building department, the small section of Oakwood being explored for redevelopment, among others, lies sandwiched between the Lake Forest Historic District and the Green Bay Road Historic District, almost as if it had been gerrymandered that way, and provides cover for development that would otherwise be deemed incompatible with the neighborhood. What are the realistic expectations to which the draft refers? Congestion, multifamily residential, parking structures, replacement of buildings, and how expensive adaptive reuse is? Threats, warnings? These sound like wholesale changes to the very fiber of our being. It was never more apparent to me than that we are moving too fast with the potential for doing irreversible damage to the brand that is our town than last week when I reached out to a neighbor to let her know about this meeting. She lives across the street from the Baptist Church. She didn't know anything about the working group, the update to the comprehensive plan, or suggestions for development in and around her street. She then contacted our other neighbors who were similarly uninformed and shocked. So if the city hasn't gathered or shared information with neighbors whose homes abut the CBD, then surely it isn't offering full transparency, participation, input, accountability, or collaboration. We are stakeholders, and you need to engage us. Because of the debacle of Building 3 on Westminster, I'm on high alert. So no cheap assurances, no project creep, no diversions or denials, no backroom deals with developers. Let's get our city right. Hire an independent urban design consultant recommended by the Preservation Foundation to develop a master plan of the needs of the city as a whole, employ and uphold our 17 design standards, invite the neighbors of the CBD to participate, and manage our development as stewards of the unique, internationally recognized, world-class town that is Lake Forest. Or to quote the draft, pause, preserve, and protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. Any others wishing to come forward? Yes, please.
Good evening. I'm Tim Downey from 475 East Westminster. I endorse what the previous two speakers said. But I guess I'd just like to underscore and maybe make a recommendation to give some assurances to the path forward. The Condo 3 project on Westminster clearly created a deep scar in the community. It evidenced a lack of respect for our historic district and the standards that we have in place. And it gave us all a great deal of concern about ongoing respect for the standards that we have in the community. So while the TSCA document, I think, is fine in its directive to respect the character and historical significance of Lake Forest, the city's lost some trust with a good amount of the community. So I would suggest that this plan be expanded to give us all some clear direction on how those standards will be implemented and controlled so we can understand, help influence, and trust the process going forward, because the city lost a tremendous amount of trust. And again, we respect our historic districts, and we thought that those standards would control the development in the historic district, but it didn't. The Plan Commission approved that project, and City Council overruled the unanimous historic district decision. So I strongly encourage you to expand the plan, to work with the community to help assure that what we love so much will be protected and respected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Rami Lopet. I had not intended to speak tonight, so I submitted a rather lengthy letter to you this morning, and I'm not sure any of you were able to take a look, so I'm going to give you a few highlights, if you don't mind.
Please.
I gave, in my review, I went through some process questions, the overall readability of the plan, the data that I think is missing and needs to be included. I rewrote the vision statement, took the liberty of doing that to be tighter and more cogent. I looked at the goals of your plan, and recommended actions. I gave you some abbreviated list of the types of actions that would correspond to goals. And I think the Plan Commission should initiate a concurrent review of City Code Chapter 159 with the proposed comprehensive plan, so that you take a look at, for example, giving 2 times the density in a development if residential is provided above the retail. Is that appropriate? So taking a look at the city code and how this plan works together with that code, I think, is vital. To go back, first of all, I would like to know if the goals for the CBD in the 1998 comprehensive plan have been met. If not, I think we should just review them and update them, but continue to use them, assess what has been accomplished. So, for example, the goals are still the same: promote the vitality and convenience of the CBD, preserve the character of historic Market Square, But however, Titan, I think the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation called the plan and its recommendations thin. I couldn't agree more. For example, if you take a look at the post office chapter or section, it's not clear. It's quite weak in its language. Let's take a look at that compared to the 1998 language. I think the 38 pages is far too long and far too wordy. We want to encourage people to read this as a direction for the future. I am a city planner. I've participated in a lot of comprehensive plan documents. This can be a lot shorter and more concise. Definitions should be given. For example, the word incentives. What are the incentives? We see the word, but we don't know what the incentives are. There's not one chart or statement of fact in 38 pages. We need to know the inventory of each building. We need to know the demographic changes between 1998 and today, the change over time of business types in the CBD, the affordable housing units versus all other price points and housing types in the CBD, the turnover of renters and buyers, the circulation patterns of traffic, especially when you're proposing a one-way on Bank Lane. How does it affect everything else? And speaking of Bank Lane, I do not understand why it received 8 pages of detailed scrutiny when many other thoroughfares and sub areas received sentences, not even a half a page, and yet they have large inconsistencies in their uses and attractiveness. Now, Bank Lane is in Chapter 159, so that's why we really need to look at the two together. With that, I will excuse myself and hope and I will volunteer to help in any way I can with editing this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Anyone else? Gentleman in yellow, I think, was getting up there first. Thank you. Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Nate Kelly, and I live at 89 East Deer Path, which is kitty corner to Laura on the southwest corner of Deer Path and Green Bay. I should also mention I'm a member of the Ward 3 caucus. You know, I want to thank the commission and the committee for its work as well as the city. It's evident you put a lot of effort into it. My concerns are that I really echo Laura's feedback with regard to community involvement in the process. So I know a number of members on the commission, as was up there. I'm also involved in the city, and I knew very little about what was going on with the CBD plan until a few days ago. And unlike maybe other community members who are less involved, I have every reason to be interested. I'm a neighbor. I abut the district that you're talking about, as well as know some of the people involved in the decision-making process. So, you know, it's not that I think that any particular detail of the plan was not well thought out, but I do think that the committee should consider taking some extra time to getting involvement from the community, make sure that you have community buy-in before adopting a plan like this. Because it will impact the city to a significant degree. And like the previous gentleman said, if there's not community buy-in for this, it's going to be a very difficult process going forward. Whereas if people feel like they have a stake and are listened to by the committee and the commission, then it's probably a smoother road ahead. So that would be my only feedback for you to consider going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Grinnell. I live at, I have to think for a moment because we moved, 745 South Camelot Court in Lake Forest, over in Ward 4. I am the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, although I'm simply representing myself tonight. Wonderful and very helpful comments, I think, made so far this evening. I won't reiterate them, but I do want to suggest a couple of things. One is, let's get this right. And when I get emails that ask me, so what's the role with the HPC in this? I kind of go, I don't know. Where are the standards? I don't know. That makes me uncomfortable because I should know those things. I guess in summary, this is something that we have waited for a long time. The staff and TESCA and the working group have put a lot of time and effort against this. And I applaud that. I agree with Mr. Downey. Unfortunately, and others, we have some serious trust issues in this community on a number of different levels. And unfortunately, they're going to spill over into decisions that go forward regarding this comprehensive plan of the Central Business District. So in summary, I'd just like to say, I hope that when you get to the point of making decisions and a timeline and outlining the details, that this is something our community is excited about rather than fearful of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grinnell. It's a little pushing and shoving on the way to the podium there.
My name is Jim Opsitnik. I live at 971 Verta Lane. I was a member of the working group with Jamie and Mr. Squeezy. I agree with much of what was said this evening, and I think part of the thing being on the group, one of us or many of us experienced is that we wanted to go forward into the area that most people are addressing right now, but that wasn't our purview. Okay, so the development of an overall plan, and for example, Bank Lane was important to us as a suggestion because it was a way of tying the Deer Path into Market Square, a walking corridor to try to bring more vitality to the street life. So this was put in really as a suggestion, knowing that it's going to go forward to other committees and other commissions. The Preservation Foundation has put together, let me back up 1 second too. I'm past president of the Preservation Foundation, so there's a tie there. Has put together about a 5-page filing for you with detailed suggestions as to what could be followed and what could be done. And I think we are in agreement that an overall design parameter, not specific architecture, but one concept was the English Village concept of which Lake Forest was founded on, to enhance on that and to build from that. And my concern is that any development that is done, the developers should enhance the visual character of Lake Forest, not just come here for their own financial reasons and build a box with windows. And yes, it does add to the tax rolls, but I think we could add to the tax rolls artistically and within the architecture that makes Lake Forest what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swarthout.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Swarthout. I'm at 987 Maplewood in Lake Forest. I'm in a historic district just down the street from Lake Forest College. I want to remind people in the audience that a few years ago, the college, which is a huge asset to the community, built a 5-story dormitory. Not the greatest looking building, but it did not impact our neighborhood. It really helped the Lake Forest College. Those kids are no longer in the neighborhood in homes and having fraternity parties in some of the rental properties. And they cross the street hundreds of times a day without any real disruption. So I want to just kind of throw that on the table. I think it doesn't get discussed quite often. There's a lot of historic districts in Lake Forest. I am a builder. I'm a developer. I grew up pumping gas at Phillips 66, where the current Harris building is, which is owned by our family, the Bank of America as well. I was here a few days ago reminding people that my father, who grew up on Old Elm Road, 300 horses and 300 mules would leave Fort Sheridan and graze on the west side. So we've seen a lot of changes in the town. I would hope that, and I know the preservation wants what's in the best interest of the community, but if I'm sitting in the back of the room and I'm observing this and I'm a developer, I'm walking out and I'm going to another community. How do you encourage a developer to come in here and enhance a building? I bought a building all the way to the end of Northwestern Avenue, built in 1980. I spent a year to get it financed and approved in front of this body, Zoning Board of Appeals, Building Review Board. There's millions into that. Now it's a rental. It was a 2-story office building. How do you encourage other people to do the same? And if you would listen to this group, I think a lot of people will take a lot of pause. So how can you work and not scare off a very well-intended developer, to encourage some revitalization in this community? And there's a lot that's needed. We've seen the change in retail, and it's not coming back anytime soon. So I think Leah's done a good job laying out the parameters. To put another layer on, I think would be very troublesome for someone to come in and now have to go through these hoops. So keep that in mind. And by the way, there are hundreds and hundreds of people in this community who don't feel like a lot of you do as it relates to the third condominium. And you just need to know that. I'm sure some of you are aware of it. There's other opinions in the community, and I think we need to respect that. And I think sometimes that gets lost. So I want to thank the Plan Commission. Oh, and another, I could sit here all day and discuss this item. 30 years ago, the FAR in many of the downtown businesses were a 3.0. They were changed to 0.75. So now that we brought in Hometown Coffee, that building is maxed out. That property is maxed out. I think you could relook at some of that density, because wouldn't it be nice to have a second floor apartment above some of those buildings that are in the downtown? How do you revitalize some of those buildings that are antiquated, that were built in the 70s and 80s? And a developer's not going to take that risk because he's already maxed out on the first floor. So we're going to see a lot of changes, I think, with banks and some of the changes that are occurring in retail. And this group needs to work with, I think, future developers, builders, property owners who have not, I think, to this point, been really engaged in this process. So I probably offended a few people in the room, but understand there's another perspective out there. So I thank you, and hope to hear from you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Swarthout. Are there any other comments? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Richard Walther, and I live at 1296 Oak Knoll on the west side of town. I want to make the commission aware that about 5 years ago there was another committee that was formed to help guide some decisions that were going to potentially be made along Deer Path Road. It's called the Deer Path Streetscape Beautification Committee. I noticed a number of the recommendations in this comprehensive plan came from that document, or appeared to come from that document. I saw some words and phrases that I remembered as when I was on that Deer Path Streetscape Beautification Committee. I served on that committee, and I had an opportunity to deal with some of the details that might have occurred on the Deer Path Streetscape. For example, things like light fixtures, plantings, trash receptacles, curbs, types of bricks that might be used. These are many of the details that would ultimately be determined through subsequent committees that were formed in compliance with this comprehensive plan. So there are processes within the city that will deal into and delve into the details for future development within the Central Business District. And I just want to make sure that for your edification, you're aware that a committee was formed and did those kinds of decisions. And we had a public meeting, about 60 people showed up from the neighboring community. Neighbors had an opportunity to provide input. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm a shorty here.
No, take your time.
I do not have the expertise of the people who came before me, but I...
State your name, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm Diane Casuto, and I live at 1200 Wild Rose Lane. I started to say I don't have the expertise of the people who came before me, but I did read the draft plan, and we were asked to talk about perhaps something that we thought was missing. And I just want to raise the very mundane topic. It's an infrastructure topic which relates to our roads. I think what got to me a little bit about the plan was thinking we already have a lot of congestion on Deer Path. We have a lot of congestion on Western, and the kinds of businesses and residences we're talking about bringing in here, I think will create even greater traffic congestion on those roads. And I don't know if that's been addressed at all, or if that's something that should be addressed in the comprehensive plan. But I think it should be, because I think it would have a pretty significant impact, especially considering we're having the plastic turf fields go in behind the Croya Center, which is going to even make Deer Path more congested than it already is. So I would just propose as part of this plan, or that you do another traffic study if you haven't done one recently. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castuto. Mr. Crawford.
So I'm Jim Crawford. I live at 550 North Green Bay. Have been a resident here for 45 years. Nate Kelly's next door neighbor. He's a wonderful guy. I just want to go on record for that. And I want to start out by commending the CBD group and the study that's been put together, because I think the vision is really important. The vision to preserve the historic character, architecturally significant buildings and spaces that are this community. I guess I just want to make 2 points to the commission that's going to take this forward. It echoes what has already been, I think, said several times, which is this doesn't really flesh out the important issues or how we solve the important issues. And your committee and others are going to have to do that. So 2 points to make. The first point is that I think there wasn't quite enough emphasis on the inner ring here. If you look at the inner ring, well, let me back up for a second. I think everyone who knows Market Square says, we're not going to touch that. We're not going to tear down Marshall Fields. We're not going to take down all those beautiful buildings that are on the cover of the draft and put up a box with windows in it. That's not going to happen. Nobody wants that to happen. But the first point I want to make is that inner ring is going to make the difference in what this community looks like for the next 200 years. And it is now parking lots, and it is buildings that are owned by developers or buildings that are owned by banks who maybe don't need it anymore. And there are developers hungering for those spaces to put things together in them. And what happens in that inner ring is going to make the difference in this whole area. That's point number one. So I hope whoever is working on this needs to and is able to keep track of that issue. The second thing is, and I don't know where the city stands here right now, but if we are really going to preserve the historic character of this community and allow and encourage appropriate development, particularly of the inner ring, which is now parking lots and buildings that are probably going to go, the AT&T central office, which it doesn't need to exist anymore, the building with no windows. What goes back into that is going to make the difference. And I think the city has to decide how much control it's going to be able to wield over what happens in the inner ring. And I would put at one end Disney World, which is absolutely a uniform view because it's owned by a company, and they just said, we want it all to look like this. It's the next step over is Vail, Colorado, for any of you who are skiers. When Vail, Colorado was started, and our family was one of the first that bought there and skied there, they said, we want a Swiss Village. And so the owners of all of that property and the city said that looks in certain ways. And so the buildings were, codes were put together. So anything that goes up has to look like that, even if it's a larger hotel for skiers in the winter season. But that's not quite the same as a Disney World, and yet they have, if you've ever been there, something that looks quite wonderful, even though it's grown now for 60 years. And I think all of you know other communities where there has been no zoning at all, and you have an absolute hodgepodge. And that's at the far end. My personal recommendation to the city was move over more towards Vail than moving to something that's not nearly as controlled. I think you need more control. You need control. And somebody earlier today said we don't have a lot of confidence right now. And the reason we don't have a lot of confidence is Building 3, quite honestly, the most recent experience. Building 3, which happens to be a box with windows in it, and resulted in a lawsuit by the developer against the city. I mean, it was just a fiasco. And I don't know why that happens, but if I can give my second point, and my only recommendation is, if you as a commission, a committee, working with the other city committees, can avoid that kind of thing and develop properly the inner ring, you will have provided a gift to the community. Thank you.
Mr. Crawford. Are there any others wishing to come forward, make public comments, questions? Why don't we see if there's any, at this point, any final questions from the public hearing will remain open, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, so there will be opportunity at our next meeting to come back forward. But at this point, maybe I'll see if there's any follow-up questions from our fellow commissioners.
None from me.
Go ahead.
Just looking at my notes. No questions now. I will later at the next meeting.
Thank you.
No questions.
Yeah, I'll reserve mine.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions, comments from the city?
Just a few comments. Much of what was said tonight is exactly what this comprehensive plan could lead to. Once this gets to a point where you're comfortable recommending it to the city council, if the city council adopts it, the Plan Commission could identify priorities as you forward this. I believe you did that along with the Waukegan Road, Settler Square Business District. Priorities of areas to focus on, which may be, Mr. Crawford just spoke to the inner ring. That is an area that my sense is the working group acknowledged the same thing that Mr. Crawford just said. That is where the city can be proactive. That is an area where there's opportunity, but more importantly, it's an opportunity for the city perhaps to be a step ahead. So if the city council saw fit, they could direct that study be done to develop design parameters, to look at code provisions related to certain areas of the central business district. The city council could discuss incentives, what type of incentives might be offered. It's not appropriate to go into that detail in this comprehensive plan, but this certainly sets the stage for much much of what has been mentioned tonight. It is the expectation that this chapter will lead to future actions. Someone mentioned a traffic study, for instance. Any significant development, we would likely require a traffic study, or again, the city could be proactive in looking at some opportunities, for instance, around Bank Lane, which the working group identified as a priority, and thinking through whether some city investments should be put forward so that we set the stage for appropriate development. So I think all good comments tonight. I think it's just a matter of sequencing and refining, and perhaps we can go back, look at this plan, and make some of those recommendations stronger or more proactive if that's the direction we get from the commission. Lee, I don't know whether you had anything to add.
I agree with that. I think part of the reason that the Bank Lane opportunity, if you will, presented itself so strongly is the fact that it's not directly adjacent to the residential, existing residential homes on Oakland. It is wedged essentially, or sandwiched between the core and the inner ring, and the ability to create a more walkable, more unique environment as opposed to what we have today, which is a glorified alley to some extent. That presented opportunities for both this interconnection between what happens at Illinois all the way up to Wisconsin and potentially beyond. So the reasons weren't just because it was a corridor, but the potential for change without having a negative impact on other uses that are already there.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. So at this point, are there recommendations that we as the Plan Commission can make to the city, something along the lines maybe of what Ms. Cerniak just laid out in terms of looking at the inner ring? I guess I can take a shot at one. Kathy, if we could take a look at the inner ring and see what else can be done to tighten up that language concerning the inner ring, and also maybe explore other opportunities that would balance the development with the historic preservation, and certainly keeping those both in balance, and see if there's other ways in which, or language in which, those two could be met, the needs of balancing historic and development. Are there any other areas?
I guess, I mean, I hesitate to get into a rambling monologue, so, but bear with me for a second, because
Wouldn't be your first time.
No, it wouldn't. But there's, you know, I'm just thinking about everything that was just said tonight, right? And Jim, you made a few comments, I think, that were, you know, I mean, that put some things in a perspective for me. You know, you've got a past chair of the Preservation Foundation who's, you know, on this working group authoring this chapter that's presented to us, who mentioned something about kind of limitations on purview. You've got folks talking about kind of how it's thin, raising the 17 design standards. You know, Kathy, you're saying, hey, you know, it's kind of in our purview to decide how far this goes. And really, in some ways, what we're trying to get at here is like, how far do you want to go in mandating things versus recognizing that we have a process, right? I mean, we have a plan commission, we have a historic preservation commission. I understand there have been some recent episodes here, that much of which was sparked before I got involved in this. So it's been interesting to dive into it and just get a sense for what has occurred here. But so I'm just kind of curious to gain more historical knowledge, and this is going to be in this intervening period while public comment is open and we are deliberating. But just to get a better perspective on, you know, what did we do in the past when we were deliberating these chapters, you know, and how far did we go? Because I did see correspondence this morning where someone was, on the one hand, you know, criticizing the process and whether or not it was being thrown out, because they were thinking about things that have recently happened, while simultaneously saying we need to adhere to a process. right? Well, we have a process. We have a plan commission. We have an HPC. We have these things. So I just think I need from the city a little more on kind of the historical, on what we've done in the past with, you know, reviewing these chapters and, you know, did we deliberate on some of these inclusions and things like that? And I can certainly follow up, but I think I'll.
And we can provide you with a response at the next meeting.
Yeah.
My inclination is to take many of the issues that were raised tonight and perhaps certainly look at the document and work with TESCA and identify areas where the language might be refined, but also to respond to many of the questions you're raising and the residents have raised, really question and answer form as we come back to you. Because I think there is history here, and again, I think there is an important distinction between what the comprehensive plan is. And this chapter that's presented to you is certainly in much greater detail than what we saw from the plan 20 years ago. But we can certainly come back to you with some detailed responses to questions if that's the way you'd like to approach it.
Great, yeah. And I hope that was just a monologue and not rambling. I just
No,
wanna
it was
make
not
sure.
rambling. It was not rambling at all.
Close.
Thank you, Mr. Ernick. I think that really the way what you just outlined would be very helpful to the commission, and I certainly think in regards to the public process. I'd also add, I guess it came up a couple of times and has in the past, that there's been a lack of communication, that it's being heard of for the first time. I would strongly recommend and urge those that are here to sign up. Kathy mentioned in back, there's a form. Please grab that form. I'd also encourage any city resident, you can sign up for the emails that come out from the city on a regular basis from the city website. And so whether it's this issue or any other issue, I've been getting those myself for years before I was on this commission. And in those emails that come out maybe once a week, you will find information on a host of topics, including the topic that we're talking about here this evening, this chapter of the comprehensive plan. So, and as was said earlier, just to address those comments, this process started, you know, we're going to finish it almost a year after it started, because it started last July of 2022. Emails were sent, postcards were sent. So the information has been going and getting out there. So please feel free to, if you have any questions in regards to that, reach out to the city and you'll certainly be added to the list if you're not there already. But I also encourage you to sign up on the website to get the city's emails. So with that, we will move on to item number 2 that is before us this evening. And that is consideration for a request for approval.
Do you have to motion to continue or no?
Do we need a motion to continue that?
You should. The public hearing is open, so a motion would be appropriate simply to continue consideration of the amendment to the comprehensive plan and keep the public hearing open.
Okay, so we will make a motion to continue this matter till our next scheduled meeting in May. And the public hearing portion will be held open, as I said earlier. So is there a motion to continue to our next May meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I got the second. Commissioner Pasquesi, did you make the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman, does that mean we can send comments at any time between now and May?
Yes, please. And it'd be helpful, you know, from a personal standpoint, if we get them before the meeting. And I understand there's a lot of information, just to give everybody respect for us to be able to read those. It's much, and I understand. And your comments are very thoughtful and considerate and very detailed. So I know you put a lot of time into that on not only this issue, but others. So I sincerely thank you for that. But yes, we will look at all the correspondences, and those can continue to come in between now and our next meeting. There will be, just for those that are still here, and there will be an announcement about this, We may change the May meeting because of a couple of personal conflicts just by a day or so. So you'll get that information, but just to put that out there as well.
And I'll just note that we will indicate on the website that the public hearing remains open and that comments can be submitted anytime over the next month. So we'll reinforce that.
Thank you. So now the next item before the commission this evening is consideration for a request for approval of a special use permit for a new takeout restaurant, Pizza by Sol, at 177 East Laurel Avenue in an existing tenant space there. At this point, I'd like to ask commission members if there are any conflicts of interest or ex parte communication.
None.
None.
I'd only add that maybe my only conflict would be that I've eaten several times at Sophia's Steakhouse and have enjoyed it very much, and have had a very good experience there. So hopefully that doesn't bar me from listening to this. But in all seriousness, I have no conflicts of interest on this. I'll ask the petitioner to come forward to the podium for the presentation. Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Brianne Carden. I'm with Ballyhoo Hospitality, which is the hospitality group that runs Sophia Steak and Pizza by Sal. Just by way of a little bit of introduction, we are hoping to open in the vacant space next to Sophia Steak. We also have opened a Pizza by Sal in Wilmette that has started a takeout program in mid-January and have had a lot of success with that. So hoping to kind of re-engage that concept and do something different that we feel like Lake Forest doesn't have, and just provide another dining option for the community. Sorry. Oops. Technical difficulties. Again, we were talking about the space adjacent to Sophia Steak on Laurel, 177 East Laurel. I believe it was previously part of the nail salon that is still open, but they have been vacant for a number of years, at least our entire existence, as well as during our time under construction. So hoping to activate something in that space, talking a lot about vibrancy in the neighborhood, and want to continue that and bring everyone down Western a little bit. Just by way of introduction, like I said, Ballyhoo Hospitality operates Sophia Steak as well as a number of other restaurants in both the city and the North Shore. If you're familiar with our North Shore restaurants, we have a second Sophia Steak location in Wilmette, and we also have Pomeroy in Winnetka, and Buck Russell's, which is a sandwich shop and bakery ice cream shop, all falling under our same umbrella. Some key players are Ryan O'Donnell, who is our owner and founder of Ballyhoo Hospitality, Mr. Glenn Kiefer, who's here with us tonight, who is a partner in all of the North Shore locations, as well as John Farrar, who is another partner with us. Myself, I'm the Vice President of Project Development, so oversee everything from construction to getting open. And then obviously must be introduced is Sal Locasio. He is our pizzaiolo. From Italy, has a very extensive background and does amazing things with pizza. I've eaten much too much of it while working on these projects, but he is the namesake of this project. This photo comes from our location in Wilmette. Very simplistic in design, both on the exterior. We don't really get into any exterior renderings or anything like that in this package. It would be very minimal, just looking at signage, which obviously we would get plan commission at a later date. But again, just a neighborhood takeout place. There is not any dining as far as seating specifically, to speak a little bit to the layout. It's counter, you walk in, you pick up your pizza. We do offer pizza by the slice, so there is kind of a standing counter planned where if you want to eat while you wait or anything like that, that would be available, but no sit-down dining planned at all. In addition, this is going to be an expansion to the Sophia Steak Kitchen, which I think is really important to note. We are opening up a portion of the wall that will connect the two kitchens. In doing that, we can utilize the space for additional prep and cooking to help the very successful business that we've had so far at Sophia, and also kind of keep change to the space and kitchen equipment and everything like that kind of more to a minimum as far as the build out is concerned. I know a very big thing for the neighborhood is parking. We heard it a lot before. We heard it a lot during our Plan Commission meetings for Sophia Steak. So just want to touch on a couple of things quickly with that. Number one thing, we've worked very closely with the building in a plan for the employee parking. Employees are only permitted to park in the municipal lot across the railroad tracks at McKinley Road. We take that very seriously. I know there was kind of some pushback when we first opened, and there's always going to be a learning curve and some training and things like that as we take on new staff, but we work very hard with our management team to instate that as much as possible and to really keep an eye out that they're not parking in spots that are designated for the businesses or residents. In addition to that, shown up here in our lease, we have designated 2 parking spots that we will plan additional signage for as well. That will be short-term spots for you to run in, pick up those orders. And then we have the 8 diagonal spots that are typically open in the evenings. We also offer valet at Sophia, and we'll work closely with the valet drivers to kind of jockey a little bit so you don't have people double parking or anything like that. We know this is a major concern, and so we want to make sure that we address all of that right off the bat with everybody. Same goes for deliveries. We have been very cognizant of the neighborhood and making sure that we consolidate our deliveries. We only accept deliveries at certain days and times in order to relieve some of that congestion. Another good thing to point out, there's a ton of residents, so it is very walkable. So we're hoping that a lot of the guests that come over, whether it's for a slice or to pick up their Friday night pizza, are walking anyway, and we can kind of accommodate that way. So I'll keep it short. I know parking was the main thing, but that's the overall gist of it.
Thank you so much. Why don't you stay there? I'm sure we'll have some questions for you. Thank you. Identification of additional issues from the city?
Sure. A little bit of background too, Chairman Dixon. Thank you, and members of the commission. For years, the city has heard requests from residents for more restaurants and more restaurants and more restaurants. And we have been successful. And, you know, we certainly know it is the result of things that have happened over the last few years. But just within the last couple of weeks, Hometown Coffee opened. It opened during spring break week, and despite that, there were lines out the doors. Certainly, Sophia Steak is doing very well, Le Colonial, and it has resulted in more calls, more concerns about parking, but I would submit to you that not being able to park right in front of the establishment that you want to go into is a good problem for Lake Forest to have. This is a morphing of a bit of the types of uses that have made up our central business district in recent years, and that too is another reason why it's so timely to relook at the central business district study. So I think this ties together very well. Sophia Steak, we've worked very closely. We're in good communication with both Brianne and Glenn, with the management and the valet staff at Sophia Steak. There have been some wrinkles. We've worked through things. We've talked with the building owner. We've talked with other tenants. It is a work in progress. We're working on, we recently put up a couple of valet parking signs, and that seems to be working well. When the concept of this additional restaurant was first brought to the city, the first thing we said is, parking's going to be an issue and delivery's going to be an issue. And I think to the credit of both Glenn and Brianne, they went back to the building owner. They secured those two parking spaces at the northwest corner of the site. And I think importantly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Pizza by Sale will not have delivery drivers. The deliveries will only be done by independent third party. So we don't have the situation such as with Donati's, where you have drivers staging on the site. So that is significant. It also is my understanding that because the kitchens are being merged, or a single kitchen is being expanded, there will not be a new hood. So the existing ventilation system will continue to operate. The changes to the space are minor. This has been a space that's been vacant for a while, and this location for a takeout restaurant seems ideal, given the fact that it is immediately adjacent to Kelmscott Park, as well as the condos west on Laurel Avenue. So you do have findings in your staff report in support of a special use permit for this new restaurant, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any clarification questions from any of the commissioners? Maybe starting on my left this time, Commissioner Davey.
It's brought up a couple of times in your note and then in a letter from a concerned citizen in the area. Where, and this is not, I guess, specific to Pizza by Sal as much as it's, where are we in the process right now with the outdoor speaker ordinance or change to that ordinance?
We heard from you that there's support. I've made contact with a acoustical engineer that we've worked with in the past, and we're still working through some technical issues, because as we talked about, if we're going to be measuring decibels at the property line, we need to have a simple, effective, efficient way to do that. So yes, that's on our plate, and we will get that back before you as quickly as possible.
Okay, yeah, I actually don't, I think, don't have any issues or questions with regard to Pizza by Sal. So.
Just one follow-up question on the last point that you just made, Kathy. We should probably move that forward quickly, the outdoor music item, obviously not necessarily pertaining to the petition before us now, but we're obviously very close, if not the warm
We're there,
months are there, right? So I would just impress upon city staff that we move quickly on that so that we get in front of that. Commissioner Pickus.
In regard to the third-party delivery, so how does it work? When you tell them when to show up in 30 minutes, pizza's gonna be ready for you to pick up and take to the customer?
Yes, so right now with Sophia, we only use delivery by DoorDash, which is the only third party we're using at any of our locations. The nice thing, especially being in a smaller community versus the city, we actually have a really good relationship with a lot of the drivers. So it's very, I wouldn't say easy, but we can easily talk to them and kind of help, even though they don't work for us, train the drivers in our parking recommendations and what our expectation is there. And we do set certain limits. So, we won't have 15 drivers showing up at once because we can't handle it either. So we do set limitations within the computer system that helps to spread that out kind of in a natural way. And again, all of the drivers that are local know our valet teams, know our managers, and we would hope to continue that kind of relationship.
Thank you.
I have no questions right now. Why don't we see if there's any public testimony in this matter? Is there anybody wishing to speak publicly on this petition? Yes.
I have a question.
Please come forward. Yes, please, to the podium.
They should have done that. Okay.
Again, please state your name again for the record.
Sure, and I'll remember my address this time. It's Maureen
No
Grinnell,
pressure.
745 South Camelot Court, Lake Forest. My question is this. You're going to have a wonderful patio, unless you've made some changes outside of Sophia Steak. what will happen when you have the very energetic pizza aficionado who wants to take the box over to one of your tables that's designated for Sophia steak? How will that be managed?
We have a hard time saying no.
Okay.
And
Mr. Kiefer, I would ask that.
Could you
Oh,
come
okay. We're gonna
forward
trade
to the
places here.
podium and address?
I'm
State
Glenn-
your name for the
I'm
record.
Glenn Kiefer. I'm one of the partners at Sophia. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about our new project. We'd probably rather not have a $19 pizza occupy a seat where we'd potentially be selling a $75 dinner. But, we find that these eventualities are probably overblown on the front side, thinking about what would happen than the actual event.
Okay.
So we'd be saying yes, probably.
Okay.
Because we are in the hospitality business and we just don't like to say no.
It's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
My only point.
But I don't think that it will affect the community or the neighborhood.
Might affect your diners.
It might affect our bottom line. But
I'll let you deal with that.
Yeah.
Outside of my purview.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any final questions from any of our commissioners?
Can I ask just a couple questions?
Please.
Kathy, are there any specific parking requirements for this space in the code? I wasn't sure, like, is it 10 spaces per 1,000, something like that, or no?
Because this is a pre-existing building in the central business district and is adaptively reused, in our central business district, we see many, many uses, many buildings that do not have on-site parking. So this actually is a building that has some on-site parking. I believe there are 16 spaces in the garage. 26. So this building has some private spaces along with the two outside. It has on-street parking. When this building was first adaptively reused about 20 years ago, the developer at that time was required to convert the spaces that were then parallel spaces on the east side of Western Avenue to diagonal spaces. So they were required to increase the parking in the vicinity, and then when Kelmscott Park was built, they also were required to increase parking and extend the diagonal spaces. So no, this particular business, the various tenants in this building are not each required to meet the parking standards in the code.
Okay. And do you know roughly how many car trips you're anticipating, either hourly or daily? I mean, I'm sure it varies on the hour, but have you gauged that at all?
It's difficult to gauge at this point, obviously, until we have a better idea of the business itself. Speaking from Wilmette, I know we obviously have those busier nights, your Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and your weeknights that are a little bit slower. Typically, if we're referring specific to a third-party driver, they may come through a number of times each night. But the nice thing with this concept and with it not being dine-in is those are quick trips. So ideally, the businesses on that side of Laurel do close a bit earlier, so those spots should open up. Again, we'll work with the valet team to not use those so that we can keep them open for those quick trips inside. But a specific number, I can't really guesstimate.
And then there was reference in the staff report, and I think in the petition, about a liquor license, and you might use the Sophia Steak liquor license. My question is, if it's a takeout pizza place, what liquor is being sold or consumed?
Again, just to reference Wilmette, because that's the one we're running right now, we only do red wine, a white wine, a beer, and a spritz. It's package only, so it's not being consumed on site. It is just meant for takeout. That way, if you're picking up a pizza and you don't want to make that second stop, you can grab a bottle of red wine.
Okay. And Kathy, that's okay? They can sell liquor like that?
Yes, I have confirmed with the city clerk, because they're operating under a single ownership, a single tax ID number, that the single liquor license is workable.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you, as the petitioner, would like to add at this point?
No, we're hoping that this all gets approved and goes well, and excited to have another location in the community.
Thank you. Any additional comments from staff? No. Okay, at this point, the testimony and comment period is closed. And at this point in the process, we as the commissioners can discuss this amongst ourselves. I'll start with Commissioner Pasquesi.
I support the petition. I think that I think Sophia so far has been appears to be a huge success for Lake Forest, and I like that even with the comments that the landlord made in the packet, that it's been a good relationship between Sophia and the landlord, and that resonates certainly with me. And I think this is a nice new offering to Lake Forest, and I love that you've done it in Wilmette already with success. So I think it's a good idea, and I'm one to support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pasquesi. Commissioner Moorhead.
I agree for all those reasons. I think traffic and parking may have some hiccups, and so I would encourage all parties to continue the dialogue on that, to tweak it if it's necessary. But other than that, I support it. Sounds like a good addition to the city.
Thank you, and I echo those same comments. I certainly look favorably upon this as well and support this. I would mention and state one comment in regards to the parking. For those that were on the commission at the time, we did talk about parking, and the original petition for Sophia Steakhouse did not have valet parking that was a part of it. Sophia's Steakhouse opened. There was some hiccups, to use your words, Commissioner Moorhead, with parking, and I know that Ballyhoo and Mr. Kiefer's team stepped forward, came forward with the idea and proposal for the valet parking, and that came out of and was secondary to the petition. So my point in stressing all that is I think the reputation of Ballyhoo precedes itself, and any issues that may come up, I certainly feel confident that they'll be addressed professionally and in a light most favorable to the city. So I certainly would support this petition for Pizza by Sol. Commissioner Pickus.
I concur with the other commissioners. I'm in support of the petition.
Yeah, nothing to add. Thank you. Is there a motion for the approval of a special use permit for the new takeout restaurant Pizza by Sol at 177 East Laurel in the existing tenant space?
So moved.
And that motion would include the staff recommendations, Commissioner Moorhead?
Subject to, in accordance with the staff report and recommendations dated April 20th, 2023.
And conditions thereof.
And the conditions thereof, those 5 bullet points that are stated in there.
Do you want me to read those?
No, that we can just refer to them. So thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Pasquesi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. At this point in our process, any public comments for any items that are not on our agenda? Anything else from staff? I know there's one item of business, and that's to the May meeting date that I alluded to a minute ago. Kathy, do you want to address that?
I did earlier in the day send out an email noting a conflict with the May 10th meeting. I've spoken with some of you interested to hear, and you don't have to tell me tonight, if you are available on Thursday, May 11th for the Plan Commission meeting.
That would be Thursday of the same week.
Of the same week. And I will send out an email tomorrow to confirm. But
Okay.
just give you a.
I can do it.
Work.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding.
Yes.
So,
So-
obviously the sensitivity, going back to the to the first item, the CBD, can we just get that communicated early and often to
We will
on the
note that date.
website?
I saw 5 head nods. I just confirming.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And I will check with Commissioner Douglas as well. And we will put that date out on both the project website and the city's website tomorrow. And then we will also include it, as we've been doing, in the weekly city e-news. And we will make it clear that additional comment is welcome. As those, if additional comments come in, we will compose a question and answer, really a cover letter for you to kind of set the stage, and then we'll also review the draft chapter and in the context of what was said tonight, and we'll see if any language updates are appropriate, and we'll present those to you in advance of your May 11th meeting.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.